All right, so we are going to dive right in. If you don't mind, please check out the bio section in your agendas for information on our lovely panelists' roles and their current happenings, and please feel free to reach out to them on Twitter or LinkedIn. Welcome. All right, so we're going to talk today about a variety of different topics. We're going to talk about really just disruption in the market research world, if you will. And we're going to begin by talking about technology. And so obviously technological developments have vastly impacted our world and our category in the last couple of decades, especially. And so we're going to start by talking really about those specifically. You can mention any type of technological development that, kind of piques your interest or what have you. But tell us, what do you think? What are your thoughts on these advancements? Do you think that it's kind of overwhelming for clients or end users or market researchers even in trying to embrace these developments, or what are your thoughts? Anyone?
Should I go ahead?
Feel free.
Yeah, it's super exciting, obviously. So that's number one. Number two, I'd say they are a bit overwhelming, but because it opens so many doors, I think it's our responsibility to learn to cope with it. And obviously, at the first glance, they answer questions around speed, etc. The needs of businesses now, we can no longer afford to have like research that take like 12 weeks, and so it solves those practicalities as the first thing. But more importantly, obviously, we've been listening for the past 2 days, is like the depth of information you get, the quality and the different angles that you see. So these are all very exciting and rich. Mm-hmm. Having said that, though, I also see the danger in these of becoming kind of golden handcuffs as well, in the sense that they are very exciting. I mean, one wants to try them, understand them, use them, but I think still needs some of the skills or experiences of conventional research, social research, market research, however you want to label it, around being able to interpret the context, being able to interpret the social and historical constructions, all these things, how they come to life. So all these new technologies are very exciting and definitely open new doors for us. But then how we interpret them and use them, I think it's our responsibility to be cautious around them.
Okay, so basically I think you're saying that there are technical complexities, practical complexities, and then methodological complexities that we simply need to understand and try to simplify but use to our benefit. Gianluca, what about you? Any thoughts in this area?
Yeah, of course technology is impacting so many different aspects of businesses and human behaviors, that of course also in market research. But I can tell just my personal example, like the activity we do, we check the execution at the points of sale, on a lot of points of sale, using a crowd of private citizens using an app. We recruit them on Facebook, like the gentlemen before they were doing, but in addition on a location based, because we recruit just where we need those private individuals. They work with an app and we deliver the data on a dashboard online. We simply could have not be here 10 years ago. Like technology is what allowed us to basically create the business and deliver the service to the client. And this brought an advantage, because actually, for example, we just checked 30,000 tobacconists to check if electronic cigarettes were really there, or when we checked 60,000 bars to see if there was a branded refrigerator. This kind of measurement of the offline world was simply not possible. So technology connects people and locations, so of course I think it's going to stay.
Absolutely. And Nadine, what about you? Anything to add? Or
yeah, I think I have a little bit of a different, I would really go so far to say, really straight out, if you ask a 10 or 7-year-old today, was there a time without the internet? They would say no. It's as if you ask our grandparents, they would say, of course, there was the same time. I think we really have to think back. It's not the question about how we use or should we use it, technology. It's there. We have to live. We have to use it because we are the generation who has this. We have a mobile phone. So, of course, the mobile phone would be for any kind of study the best way of recording a diary or so. I think we should not put it in separate anymore to think about it. It's like the air we breathe. We have to do it this way. It's just making it now with paper, it would not be the right time. In the 90s it was totally fine. I think I would really like to twist this conversation with technology, just really through what technology we're talking about. Because I think technology is not the question anymore. I think it's really about, are we talking about fingerprint, heartbeat, recording, all of that? Mm-hmm. Or are we talking about to digitizing any kind of methodology? I think the second one has to be our standard now. But I think when we really talk about, we really want to understand what people feel, how their physical expressions are. I think there is still the question, where does it add value to a mythology? And I think that is a good discussion to have. But I think the step before, it's like when I go in a room, of course there's light, and when I switch on the light, I don't think about that I have to produce electricity or something like this. Technology is in my eyes there.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And that actually leads very nicely into our next question, which is about the sticky factor, right? Are there certain methodologies or technological advancements that you believe are sticky and will be around? Or are there some that are just kind of hyped or trendy right now? And please be honest. But just so that we can learn as a group where we might need to invest our skill set or level ourselves up or think, okay, I want to embrace that, because how embarrassing would it be to sell something internally or even externally and then it's obsolete or it just becomes one of those things? How do you determine, or what do you think? Let's start with, which ones do you guys think? And Nadine, we can start with you since you were last time. But
I got it. That's what I'm trying to say. It's just like I'm coming more from my entire career. I was always working in startups. So it's sometimes that I think maybe it's a great technology, or what I said before, it's a mythology I would love to use, and that's totally cutting edge. And then I realize I have to look at the company, at which stage we are. Is that already a good way of doing it? So I have to make a lot of trade-offs. And seeing this from a client side, I think it's always a development. I want to get the best results we can action on, and therefore I have to find the best methodology. So, for example, what I would say, and it's not learning new skills, but when we do some call now that it's online communities, mobile diaries, so that's super clear. But I think then there are these small things where we really want to understand how people feel and behave with things, or how experiences, and then it could be really interesting. For example, back in my career, I did a lot of film testing. And with film testing, it is essential to really try to record how someone is responding. And there, it was for me super interesting to really learn how all the elasticity of your skin is reacting, how important that is. I think what we really have to learn is find the right moment to use the right methodology. And we sometimes tend to do, oh, that's cool, that's new, let's do it for everyone. But I think we have to be precise here. It's not really an answer, but
no, it's a great answer, actually. I think you did answer the question in a very nice way. Does anyone want to expand upon that?
I think that something that technology brought and that is going to stay is the mentality of KPIs, of having metrics. Mm-hmm. Like, not too many years ago, technology was a dark screen with DOS characters and a blinking cursor. So actually, it was very, very long and complicated to have quantitative data in an easy and recurring way. But now that is becoming more and more easy, it's becoming easier also to measure reality. And if you want to improve what you're doing, first of all, you have to measure it. And this is something that I think technology made much easier, like the mindset of KPIs.
I really agree to that. I think that's really, yeah.
Best, anything to add?
I think
all these new kind of ways of measuring things, understanding things, however you want to call them, they will disappear and change, and we just have to accept the fact that that's now the natural course of things. I don't really expect any of it to be sticky anymore, because I mean we were discussing earlier in the day that how long it took TV to get saturated, and then how long it took the smartphone to get saturated.
Right.
Same for research methods. So I don't expect anything to last for decades anymore. They are going to change, and we have to be cognizant of the fact that they will change, and that's the new paradigm now. So it's not too bad that they change, I think.
Right, just embrace change, embrace what's coming, continue to be on top of things. And we had several speakers actually talk about not being afraid. And I think that kind of parlays into that nicely, because you just have to not, you do have to embrace it and not fear it. And again, just look at continuous improvement in an evolving industry. So we've touched on biometrics a bit. And thank you. And so now let's talk about them a little more granularly. Obviously, biometrics is like a big deal to a lot of firms, and clients these days are really asking for it. And do you see biometrics as something where researchers should skill themselves up in that area specifically, or would you tell them to skill up in another area first, or what are your thoughts there?
I would say yes and no. Because, yes, it is very important. It enables us to understand and observe things that we were not able to before. But then again, it does not answer everything. And that was actually the point I was trying to make in the first question, is it's not only about the biometrics and the things you can measure with that sort of methodology, but also the sociological hat of the researcher is still very important. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we understand yet well enough the culture nuances in those things. So yes and no. And in all my attempts to use that sort of new technological initiatives, the most successful cases are where I had very innovative people who were very competent with these high technologies, coupled up with in-depth social scientists, insights people, because the more we talk about this, the less I hear the word insight, and that scares me a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Gianluca, Nadine, do you have anything to add there, or would you like us to move on?
Biometrics will be an additional source of information, and as long as the private individuals will want to share that, it could be a potential source of information. But yeah, I think that that kind of evolution will also be strictly connected with the fact that today our interface with technology is this object. I don't think it's going to be this object anymore in a few decades. Maybe there will be some other input-output interfaces, and that will be probably very strict with something, I don't know, something like Google Glasses or any other thing, and that object will be very much be linked with biometrics. So this is something to come, I think.
Okay.
I think that's a really nice point of putting it. Coming back to your question, should we train? I think I don't think that every researcher really had to train in this methodology, but we should be all aware when is the best time to use the methodology. I think to analyze it, so how can we use this information if someone else gathers it for us? This is something everyone should have, and it should be an option or a tool we can always use, but I think we don't have to train each other for that. I think there should be some experts, and we should bring them on board when we need them.
Okay, perfect. Now we're going to move into a very hot topic, or really incredibly hot topic. So earlier today we heard about data contamination. We heard about the number of bots that are online, and we obviously need to solve for that. What % of researchers today do you think are taking that into account? And then how can we change this? What do you see as changing it?
can say it's just like, honestly, I think a fraction of people take into consideration. My personal view on it, I think if we could really create bot who is really absolutely mirroring a specific audience, and we would not have to get the input from human beings. We can, for specific topics we want to test, like an engineer's testing with bots, if we want to have to replicate that, and if they're exactly mirroring the audience I have researched before, I think it's amazing. But I know that I'm very niche with this view. But I think, as we said before, we shouldn't be afraid. We should test it and see what is a great application. But I think some panels who are asking questions over and over, I'm sometimes like, you can actually make an intelligent bot out of it and replace it.
That makes sense. Now, in terms of data accuracy and fraudulent responses, kind of piggybacking on that, what works for you in that area to identify any type of data contamination or data quality issues? Best? Or John Luca, you? Yeah, please.
Please, Beth, you go first.
I think this is a very big question, and I don't think an opinion is not an answer to it. It's the biggest problem I think we have, and we had. So it's not a new problem. It's just changing shape with the things. When I first started working, and out of that you can start guess the age game over my age as well. The main problem we were discussing in research conferences was the non-response bias and representative of the face-to-face survey and all that sort of stuff. So this is now taking another more advanced form, which is way more complex. The world of research needs to find ways to protect itself from that. I don't think it can protect itself thoroughly, but yeah, it is, I think, our biggest problem now, and I love hearing new recruitment solutions and everything, but those again don't solve the entire problem either. So it's I think, our biggest problem, and I really don't have the answer.
Okay, this topic was the founding topic of our company. Like we recruit private citizens all around 17 countries now, and we tell them that with an app they can earn money. Like in general, every human being will try to find the shortcut to maximize the benefit and minimize the cost. And this, of course, can be changed by cultural mindsets. But in general, everybody will try to ease its life. So if the theory that be my eye is that if there's a way to cheat, they will cheat. Okay, it's deterministic. So we built all the methodology with this in mind. So there's for example, we tell them that when they need to go and visit the supermarket, they cannot start the activity if they don't check in with GPS and take a picture of the signage. So to avoid them telling that they went to the place and they didn't. If they have to verify that there's an object there, they have to take a picture of the object, and the picture cannot be taken from the camera roll because they could have taken that picture in another place, and in some cases they have to go and search for a promotional display in a mall, and we didn't want them to stay at the entrance and say, "Oh, I didn't find it." So we pay a slice of the compensation as they find the topic. So managing this bent to find shortcuts has to deal with the process. So if you can create an alchemy so that their advantage matches your goal, then you succeed. And this applies in every other situation, like when they were mentioning people cheat to be recruited in panels. Of course, if you say, "Hey, who drinks whiskey? We're hiring people for 100 euros for a panel." Of course, like if your process doesn't manage the situation, of course you will have people cheating. So it has to be something built into processes. That's my personal opinion.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for your example. And Nadine, what about you? Anything to add there?
No,
Okay,
nothing to add.
fabulous. Well, are there tools, we obviously just heard about John Lucas, but are there tools or techniques that you utilize when you are reviewing or your teams are reviewing data to ensure its accuracy or data quality management and manage fraudulent responses?
I won't be able to name a particular tool. It's really ad hoc, so it's really depending on the situation.
Okay.
A lot of common sense goes into it to understand whether they really make sense. But yeah, I can't really specify a single tool.
I would say it comes always with a price. I think to wish to achieve their non-cheat, like you just phrased it, people try to do that. But I think it's in every research you have this, so it's balancing itself out. If you compare data to data, it is sometimes there. And of course, when we set up a research, we try to find a way also around to have a bit of track. But honestly, if you force them in a way, then another bias will appear if you force them too much, because then they are not deciding free anymore, because they would maybe never run through an entire mall constantly. Never. It's just like it comes always with a price, whatever I say.
Yeah, sure. It's basically building an alchemy of incentives and disincentives, and always wondering, does he have an incentive to lie in this situation? Typically, human beings, if they don't have an incentive to lie, they don't lie. If they have it, they will. So it really depends. We deal mainly with store checks rather than panels asking opinions. But even in the opinions, polling opinions, also the other elements appear. Like, for example, if the answer of a respondent is shared by to other people, the perception that he could have of how you would look like for having given that answer is going to influence. So it's really a matter of processes to me in preserving quality.
Okay, and you have touched on kind of our next topic, which Celia talked about today, how motivation aids or helps attention in those even as young as 2 years old. And so how can we use that information to assist us in respondent recruitment? Now, John Luca, you've already mentioned how incentives can increase or go into your account along the journey. Are there other ways best?
I don't know if there are other ways, but as a way of looking at it, I think that now needs to be embedded in anything and everything. Again, yesterday the presentations we heard around gamification and those sort of things, again increasing the willingness, motivation and the enjoyment of the respondent, A, to participate, B, during the process, is really important. First of all, because it would be very selfish of us to just make people do something they hate doing.
Right.
And obviously then it would impact the data quality and everything as well. So I'm not after necessarily prescribing particular ways, but as a way of looking at it, on all sorts of research, I think we're past the age of lengthy questionnaires that are totally standardized and non-personalized and all that. So it's a thing of the passé now.
Absolutely. Nadine's?
I think with incentivization, basically for quant, as especially when you do customer research, I'm sometimes a fan of when you have a valuable brand, and I worked for SoundCloud before, so there was never a problem. You don't have to incentivize them. It was really not necessary because everyone wants to share things. I think it's really depending what kind of research you're conducting. I try to incentivize as less as possible, but if it really, as we heard before, if we use our time, I think it's worth to pay back this time when they think time is money.
Fabulous. Well, let's turn to our Slido app and see if there's anything. Dan, did anything pop or rise to the top?
Yeah, there's quite a few different questions, and depending how long it takes to answer the first one, we may do one or two. This panel is called Future Shake-Up, Research Disrupted, and you've talked quite a lot about things that are happening now. So can you give us a sense of whether you feel optimistic about the future relative to the insights world, and if so, why?
Totally, yes. Totally optimistic. In my sector, but in general, which is store checks, basically, the fact that we're seeing a globalization also of methods and standards. So we will have category management done in China in a similar way that is done in Italy or in UK. It's simply opening widening the market for us, and the methodology we're using. It's obviously eased by the diffusion of smartphones and networks, the data networks. But in general, I'm totally positive. I think that the world today is better than the world 50 years ago and 100 years ago, and I think that 50 years from now the world will be better than today. So I'm a positive.
Yeah, I'm also extremely positive. When I remember how a study or a reader study in the end of the 90s was when I was studying and helping, it took 9 months to conduct something. Honestly, but that was, at this time, it was the right way of doing it. But I think we always have to learn more, and we don't know what the future really brings, but we have to stay on top of these things.
Yeah, and I think all these new developments change the overall market research era and the kind of players we have with it, which brings some sort of richness. Rather than having fewer bigger companies, we have many alternative point of views now, which is very enriching for a research user and for bigger businesses. So in that sense, I'm very optimistic as well.
Okay, we'll ask one more. It's come up on a couple of the previous sessions too. It's around the singularity. And this time it very specifically says, is the singularity near? But in general, what are your thoughts around that and all the noise you hear around all these different advances and humanity being doomed?
I pass.
God, what should I say? I said I'm optimistic, so the question I cannot read. I think I found out artificial intelligence is so amazing, and I think it's nothing bad. And I don't want to trade off one against the other. I really think both together create the future. Full stop.
Yeah, I think the way I see it, I really like the quote earlier this morning saying artificial intelligence is going to help us be better humans. That's how I see it. So the research world needs to make sure that this doesn't become a golden handcuff again, and the deep insights, understanding, it's still there. And when you couple those two things up, I think it's something magical.
I think one final note, I think we all sometimes know how artificial intelligence in a tech startup really looks like. And if you look deeply into that, then you're not too amazed anymore. And I think we all know that there is a couple of years ahead until it's this vision we know from the movies.
Fabulous. Well, thank you all. We appreciate your time today and your honest responses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.